A woman in Lucknow is A woman in Lucknow is refused a loan. The reason, buried in a bureau file, is a default recorded against her name. Except the default belongs to another woman, same name, different city, whose record got merged into hers by a lazy matching algorithm years ago. She doesn't know this, she only knows the no. Wrong data doesn't announce itself, it just quietly decides things: loans, jobs, premiums, flats, while wearing the costume of fact. The DPDP Act's answer is a duty most coverage skips entirely. Where data drives decisions or travels onward, the fiduciary must ensure it is complete, accurate, and consistent. Today, the underrated duty, why it's aimed where it's aimed, and how to build for it before your data quietly decides something wrong. You're listening to DPDP Daily. I'm Harmeet Singh Kapoor. I've spent my career running large programs and portfolios, the discipline of making complex things actually happen. And for the past few years, I've brought that discipline to India's data protection law. I wrote the DPDP Act Compliance Handbook, From Law to Ground Reality, and this show is that book, opened up one episode at a time. If you're new here, the 30-second background: in 2023, India passed its first comprehensive data protection law, the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. In November 2025, the government notified the rules that make it operational on a phased clock that runs to full enforcement in May 2027. Together, they decide what every company, hospital, school, app, and shopkeeper in this country may do with your personal data and what you can demand when they get it wrong. 15 minutes a day, no jargon, real answers. Let's get into it. Start with the provision's precise shape because its intelligence lives in the trigger. Section 8 requires the fiduciary to ensure the completeness, accuracy, and consistency of personal data in two situations: where the data is used to make a decision that affects the data principal, and where it is disclosed to another data fiduciary. Not all data, all the time. The duty concentrates where error concentrates harm. Think about why that's wise drafting. A typo in the marketing database sends a mispersonalized email. Annoying, trivial. The same typo in the underwriting dataset prices a family out of health cover. Demanding perfect accuracy across every byte an organization holds would be an infinite unfocused burden. Demanding it where decisions and disclosures happen aims the entire obligation at the exact points where data becomes consequence. It's the proportionality instinct from our Puttaswamy episode applied to data quality. So the first practical move is identification. Where in your organization does the duty actually bite? Walk your data flows asking two questions. Question 1: where does data drive decisions affecting people, credit scoring and loan approval, hiring screens and background checks, insurance underwriting and claims, tenant verification, fraud flags that freeze accounts, algorithmic decisions too? And hold that thought, because when we reach the significant data fiduciary episode, algorithmic due diligence becomes an explicit obligation for the largest players. Today's duty is its statutory ancestor for everyone. Question 2: where does data leave us for another fiduciary who will rely on it? The report to the credit bureau, the KYC handoff, the employment verification you answer about a former staffer. The moment data crosses to another fiduciary, your errors become their inputs. And the duty makes you accountable for the quality of what you export. Now the three words themselves, because each does distinct work. Accuracy: the data corresponds to fact, the default that actually happened, the address that's actually current. Completeness: the record isn't misleading by omission. Reporting the default without the subsequent settlement is technically true and materially false. A partial fact deciding someone's fate is this duty's target as much as a wrong one. Consistency: the organization doesn't hold three versions of the truth: one system showing the loan closed, another showing it live, and a decision engine consuming whichever it reached first. Consistency failures are the most modern of the three, born of exactly the 14 system sprawl we described in the erasure discussions. And they are the ones data mapping from your countdown work exposes first. The Lucknow story from the cold open isn't hypothetical, by the way. Mistaken identity mergers and stale defaults are the bread and butter of credit record grievances in India, and every practitioner in financial services knows the pattern, which is why I tell lenders and bureaus that this duty formalizes what their own regulators have circled for years. Data quality in decision systems is not an IT metric. It's a fairness obligation with the person on the other end. So, what does compliance actually look like? Four disciplines in ascending order of maturity. First, provenance. Know where each decision driving field comes from. Self declared, verified, purchased, inferred. Because quality control starts with knowing what you'd be controlling. Inferred and purchased data deserve the most suspicion and get the least. Second, validation at the gates. Format checks, plausibility checks, deduplication and identity matching discipline at the points where data enters decision systems. The merge that ruined our Lucknow applicant was a gate failure, cheap to prevent, expensive to unwind. Third, freshness. Accuracy decays, addresses change, defaults get settled, employment ends. So decision driving data sets need review cycles and staleness flags, not eternal faith in a 2019 upload. Fourth, reconciliation, where multiple systems hold the same fact, one source of truth, and scheduled consistency checks, so the decision engine can't dine on contradictions. And then the discipline that costs nothing and delivers the most. Take the correction, write seriously before it takes you seriously. Later in this arc, we'll cover the data principles right to correction, completion, and updating. And here's the reframe I want to plant early. Every correction request is a free data quality audit performed by the one person who knows the ground truth best, motivated to get it right. Organizations that make correction easy, findable, fast, propagated to every system and every downstream fiduciary they've disclosed to are running a continuous accuracy program staffed by their own customers. Organizations that make correction a support ticket or deal are choosing to keep their errors and their liability together. And note the propagation point because it closes today's loop. When you correct a record you've previously disclosed onward, the duty's logic, you're accountable for what you export, means the correction should chase the disclosure. The bureau report gets amended, not just your copy. Let me give you the closing question that makes this episode operational, and it takes one meeting to answer. For each decision system we run, could we show the board the quality controls standing between raw data and the decision? Not aspirations, controls, the validation rules, the freshness policy, the reconciliation schedule, the correction workflow with its propagation records. If the answer is a documented yes, this duty is your friend because in a dispute, your process is your defense. If the answer is silence, remember Lucknow and remember that under this act, silence eventually gets asked to explain itself. Tomorrow, the life cycle's mandated ending. Erasure, when data must die, the purpose no longer served test, the retention windows, and the 48-hour warning the rules add for the largest platforms, and why deletion is the hardest engineering problem in this entire statute. That's today's episode of DPDP Daily. If it made this law a little clearer, do one thing for me, send it to one person who needs it. That's how this show grows. Everything I covered today with the templates, checklists, and audit frameworks behind it is in my book, The DPDP Act Compliance Handbook From Law to Ground Reality. And I post one practical DPDP insight every morning. Find me on LinkedIn and on X and Facebook as well, under Harmeet S. Kapoor. One important note, this is education, not legal advice. For decisions about your organization or your rights, take proper professional advice on your specific facts. New episode every day. I'll see you tomorrow.